والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحانك اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أمسينا وأمسى الملك لله والحمد لله لا شريك له لا إله إلا هو وإليه المصير. أمسينا على فطرة الإسلام وكلمة الإخلاص وعلى دين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى ملة أبينا إبراهيم حنيفا وما كان من المشركين. اللهم إني أمسيت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتم علي نعمتك وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما أمسى بي من نعمة أو بأحد من خلقك فمنك وحدك لا شريك لك فلك الحمد ولك الشكر. يا رب لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا. ثم أما بعد, my dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We start our halaqah tonight by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us this opportunity to meet again and go through the topic of the lives or the stories of the prophets and the messengers. May Allah grant all of them the best peace and blessings upon them, their families, upon all the righteous people who followed them in this life. And so we are still doing kind of like an introduction before talking about the actual stories of the prophets. So last time we talked about the definition of a prophet and the difference between a prophet and a messenger. We talked about the prophethood as a gift, a divine gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not something that people can get through going through like a specific spiritual program or something like this. We talked about the difference between prophethood and power, kingdom. We talked about also the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen and selected the prophets amongst the best and the elite of this humanity. We also talked about the importance of believing in the prophets. Also the preference between prophets. We said that not all the prophets are at the same level, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected some of them over others and made some of them better than others. And as we believe, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that we believe that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen him on the top of all the prophets and made him the last one, and he is the final and the seal of all the prophets. So there will be no prophet after Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. So tonight, inshallah, we will continue talking about some of these topics to understand the topic of, or the concept of prophethood much better. When it comes to the prophets and their messages, we also believe that all the prophets came with the same message. So there is no difference between the message that was brought to people by Prophet Nuh and Ibrahim and Musa and Isa and Muhammad and Ishaq and Yaqub. All of them, they came with the same message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we believe in the unity of the message. And when we go through the verses of the Quran that talked about what each prophet taught his people, conveyed to his people, we always go through this verse, as it was mentioned in Surah Al-Nahl, for example. وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا. And we have sent to every single nation a messenger. To do what? أن اعبدوا الله واجتنبوا الطاغوت. Worship Allah and avoid worshipping any other one or thing except Allah. U'budullah, worship Allah, doesn't mean just to worship without belief. U'budu here includes believe in Him and worship Him. Believe in Him and serve Him and submit to Him. Because there is no worship without belief. So people should not understand U'budullah, just worship Him, without necessarily having the belief in Him. No. Because we believe that the true worship is the one that is based on the true belief. U'budullah, worship Allah alone. Wajtanibu al-taghut, ijtanibu, avoid the worship of al-taghut. Al-taghut is a word, is a term in Arabic language that means every other creation that is worshipped beside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So al-taghut could be a person. Fir'aun asked people to worship him. So he is taghut. Al-taghut could be the desire. There are some people who worship their own desire. Al-taghut could be power. There are some people who worship power. Al-taghut could be wealth. There are some people who worship wealth. So al-taghut huwa kullu, in Arabic we say, the definition, kullu ma yu'badu min dunillah. Everything and everyone that is worshipped beside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is called al-taghut. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, al-taghut was the idols that people used to worship beside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that every single Rasul and Prophet that Allah sent to a specific nation or a group of people, this was his slogan. U'budullah, worship Allah, and avoid worshipping anyone else or anything else beside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this indicates the unity of all the messages that the prophets taught or conveyed to their people. The need for the prophets. If we ask the question, can this humanity survive without prophets? Can this humanity reach that level of righteousness? Can people know about the Creator, about their purpose of life, about what's going to happen after death without having prophets? So this is impossible. Believers and faithful people cannot seek the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without prophets. So the prophets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to the people in order to bring life back to the hearts of the people. So whenever the hearts of the people are dead, meaning there is no connection whatsoever with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to these people prophets in order to revive them, in order to bring them back to life. This is how important the need for the prophets. But we have seen, and we are going to see that most of the prophets were rejected by their own people. They were rejected. So the obedience and following the prophet and listening to the prophet was one of the teachings, one of the instructions that were given to those people. So in many places in the Quran, actually 8 times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said on behalf of the prophets when they talked to their people, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُونَ. So observe taqwa, be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then what? And obey me. The prophets asked their followers, their people, to obey them. Why? Because they are sent by Allah to teach them how to survive in this life and how to be safe on the day of judgment. And this cannot happen without showing this obedience to the prophets alayhi salatu wassalam. So the need for the prophets is as important as the need for food and water and the air that we breathe to survive. Because without embracing the message of the prophet, our hearts will be dead. If our hearts die, then there is no sense for our bodies to remain moving on this earth. So, people ask questions in this life. And there are some questions that the human mind, no matter how smart the person is, how sophisticated the human mind is, there are some questions that the human mind cannot answer. Cannot answer. If somebody asks, who created me? Science cannot answer this question. What's the definition of death? Science cannot answer this question. What is going to be after death? Science cannot answer this question. So these questions can only be answered through the revelation, through al-wahy. And the revelation comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the people through the prophet. So this humanity cannot survive without the guidance of the prophet. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whenever He wants to communicate with people, He sent to them a prophet in order to communicate to them, with them through the prophet. This is how important the prophets are in the life of this humanity. And the role of the prophets, of course, is to introduce Allah Azza wa Jal to the people. The role of the prophets was to introduce Allah to the people, to tell people who is your Lord, who is your Creator, and why you are here on this earth. What's the purpose of your creation? To serve Allah. How to serve Him. To worship Allah. How to worship Him. So the prophets were sent in order to teach people how to serve, how to submit, how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, the role of the prophets was to give the information to people and do what we call in Arabic iqamatul hujjah, meaning that no one will have any excuse on the day of judgment. No human being can stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment telling Him, Ya Allah, I didn't hear about anything. I didn't hear about any prophet. I didn't hear about a message that you have sent. Why people cannot say this? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to them the prophets. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا. وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ, and we do not punish any one or group of people until we send to them a messenger. You cannot hold somebody responsible if you do not give them the information. If you do not give them the manual, the guide that will help them to conduct their lives, if you don't give them that, if you don't tell them why they are here, what's their purpose of what's the purpose of their lives, if you don't do this, you cannot hold them accountable after that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here that no one will have any excuse on the day of judgment. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said also in another verse, when He said, وَلَوْ أَنَّا أَهْلَكْنَاهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ مِّن قَبْلِهِ, and if we punish them with a punishment before sending Him, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which means that if we did not send to them any prophet, and we punished them for what they were doing, for the fasad, for the falsehood and the mischief that they were doing, we punished them without sending them a prophet, لَقَالُوا رَبَّنَا لَوْلَا أَرْسَلْتَ إِلَيْنَا رَسُولًا. They would say on the day of judgment, Ya Allah, how come you punished us without sending us somebody to teach us? We didn't know. How come you held us accountable without telling us what we were supposed to do? We didn't know. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to them the Prophet. لولا أرسلت إلينا رسولا فنتبع آياتك من قبل أن نذل ونخزى. It would be better, Ya Allah, if you sent to us a messenger so we can follow him before we will be humiliated. Meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here again that one of the purposes of sending the prophets is to let people know about the purpose of their life, so no one will have any excuse on the day of judgment when they will be held accountable. The other topic that we need to talk about is why prophets have been always humans. There was no prophet that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to this humanity among the angels or any other creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All the prophets from Adam alayhi salam until Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, all of them with no exception, they were humans. And because they were humans, some of them were rejected because of this reason. Why? Because some of the people who rejected the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their excuse was, how come a human can be a prophet? How come a human can be a Rasul? Because humans are not perfect. Humans are, make mistakes. They have their own shortcomings. A human cannot be a prophet. This is what many people in different times, during the time of different prophets, this is how they explained why they have rejected their prophet and rejected the message of their prophet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned some of what they have said in the Quran. أَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ بَشَرًا رَسُولًا. They used to ask this question. Did Allah send a human as a messenger? Which means for them, this is not acceptable. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered them. He said, قُلْ, tell them, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, قُلْ لَوْ كَانَ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَلَائِكَةً يَمْشُونَ مُطْمَئِنِّينَ. Tell them, if there are on earth angels walking, living like humans, as you are living right now, لَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَلَكًا رَسُولًا. At that point, of course, we will send to them an angel as a messenger. But the creation of Allah that exists on this earth are not angels. They are humans. So that's why we have sent humans as messengers and as a prophets. In other verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala argued with them that even if we sent to them angels as prophets and messengers, people will have another reason why they have to reject the message. What will be the reason at that time? We cannot follow an angel. I mean, he is an angel and we are humans. We can never be like him. Okay? So, again, when people want to find any excuse, any justification for rejecting the message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will find it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen out of His wisdom, out of His mercy, to send to humans prophets and messengers who are humans like them. So they can imitate them. They can take them as an example. They can do what they do. They can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen all the prophets and all the messengers amongst the human themselves. The prophet's mission. So if we want to detail, we know that in general, the mission of all the prophets was to do what? To convey the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To convey the divine message to their people and their tribes and their families and etc. But if we want to break down the mission of the prophets, we will say the following. Number one, the main and the most important mission of all the prophets was inviting people to Allah's path. Ad-da'wah. What does it mean, da'wah? Da'wah means invitation. Okay? But the da'wah of the prophets was to invite the people to seek Allah's pleasure. And there is no way to seek Allah's pleasure unless we walk all together on the straight path, as-sirat al-mustaqim, on this dunya, on this life, as-sirat al-mustaqim of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah's path has two major components. Number one, the belief, and number two, the worship. Which means to believe that there is only one creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty. وَحْدَهُ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ. He has no partners. This is number one. The second component is, He is the only one to be worshipped. No one has the right to be worshipped except the Creator Himself. So the prophets invited their people to believe in Allah and to worship Allah alone. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in several verses in the Quran, He addressed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, telling him, Ud'u ila sabili rabbik. Ud'u, invite people to the path. Sabil means tariq, the path, the way. Invite people to the way, to the path of your Lord. قل, in another verse, قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُ إِلَى اللَّهِ. Tell them, O Muhammad, this is my path. I invite people to Allah. So this is the first and the most important, the main mission of all the prophets is to invite people to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't invite them to themselves, but they invite them to seek the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second mission of the prophets, conveying Allah's message as they received it without changing and without compromising. Whatever they have received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have to convey it. They have to give it to others. Without changing, without compromising, without trying to make people happy. If people don't like this stuff here in this, portion, let me get rid of it so people will be happy. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ. When the prophets addressed and talked to their people, to their followers, to their nations, they said, وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ. We were not commanded, we were not asked except to convey the message with clarity, clear, without any confusion. Al-Mubin, which means clear. Al-Balagh is to convey. And the prophets were asked to make things easy and simple to people to understand. And we're going to talk about one of the characteristics of the prophets is to make the message that they convey to their people simple and easy to understand. So this is the second mission of the prophets, was to convey their message to Allah, that they received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the people without changing anything. Even though many of the prophets, they were asked by their own people that we like everything that you are inviting us to, except one thing. If you remove it, we will accept your faith. And these negotiations took place, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ many times. They asked him to remove, a lot of stuff. But the Prophet ﷺ said, it's not up to me. It's not up to me. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to me. And it's the whole package. Either you accept it or you reject it. You cannot do تُؤْمِنُونَ بِبَعْضٍ وَتَكْفُرُونَ بِبَعْضٍ. You believe in part of it and you don't believe in other parts. And we have seen when some of the delegations came to the Prophet ﷺ and they tried to negotiate with him, like the people of Taif. They told him, can we believe in you and become Muslims but not to pray 5 times a day? Can we do this? And he was like, no, you cannot. Can we be Muslims and we do everything, but we remain, drinking wine and alcohol? And he was like, no, you cannot do this. So there were some attempts from people to convince the prophets to remove stuff that they didn't like in the message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to them. But the prophets didn't do anything like this. The third mission of the prophets, giving glad tidings and warning. In several verses of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about the prophets and messengers as مبشرين ومنذرين. رسلا مبشرين ومنذرين. Messengers, مبشرين. مبشر, it's taken from a tabshir, which means to give the good news to people. Al-bushra, the good news. Okay? منذرين, warning, to warn people. So, mubashirin, to give them the good news that if you follow this path, you will be forgiven, you will be blessed, and you will be admitted on the day of judgment to Al-Jannah. These are the good news. Munzirin, warning people, is that if you reject this faith, if you reject this message, if you don't do what your Creator asked you to do, then you will end up on the day of judgment being admitted to hellfire. At that point, there is no one to blame except yourself. So the prophets did both. They gave the glad tidings to those who accepted the faith, and they were sincere in following their prophets. But also they warned those who rejected the faith and didn't want to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is another mission of the prophets, to give the glad tidings, but also to warn those who failed to honor their commitment with Allah Azza wa Jalla. Number 4, educating people. People, in order to move them from al-kufr, from disbelief, to al-iman, to become believers, they need to be educated. They need to be educated. And education was one of the main tasks of the prophets with their own people. Educating the non-believers to become believers, and then educating the believers to excel, to improve their commitment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the education here has 2 major components. Number 1, giving them the information, the knowledge, al-ilm. And number 2, spirituality. Ilm, knowledge without spirituality doesn't benefit. And spirituality without ilm, without knowledge, might lead people astray. So, al-ilm guides spirituality, and spirituality guides knowledge. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the beginning of Surah Al-Jumu'ah, when he said, هُوَ الَّذِي, Allah, He is the one, هُوَ الَّذِي بَعَثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُ. It is He is the one who sent to the illiterate people a messenger from amongst themselves. He was not a stranger. He didn't come from nowhere. He's not an alien. He was one of them, from the people of Quraysh, from the people of Mecca. To do what? هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته. Number 1, to recite to them the verses of Allah, which is Quran. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, to purify them, spirituality. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ, and to teach them the book and the wisdom. وَإِنْ كَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala summarized this mission of the Prophet ﷺ in this verse. This is how the Prophet ﷺ taught his people. This is how he gave them the knowledge. This is how he purified them spiritually, to the point that one of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, he used to say, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يفرغنا ثم يملأنا. The Prophet ﷺ used to empty us and fill us up. To empty us from the concept of al-jahiliyyah, ignorance, kufr, disbelief, a-shirk. He took all the components of the disbelief from within us, and then He gave us something better. He gave us a tawheed, the aqidah, the faith of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gave us an akhlaq, he gave us an ibadah. This is how the Prophet ﷺ taught his companions and also purified them spiritually. So this is a very important task and mission of the Prophets, which is educating people about Allah, educating people about this life, educating people about the purpose of their lives. Number 5, the 5th mission of the Prophets was correcting wrong concepts. There were so many misconceptions about Allah Himself, about the angels, about previous prophets, about afterlife, about worship. So the prophets came to correct these wrong concepts, to tell people who is Allah, why you are here in this worldly life. When you die, where are you going? So one of the tasks of the prophets is to correct and to fix all these wrong concepts that used to exist at the time of that same prophet. And we have seen, for example, at the time of Nuh alayhi salam, people were worshipping idols. And those idols at the beginning, they were, before that, they were righteous people. So people, when they were worshipping idols, they didn't do this because they knew that it was something wrong and they wanted to do something wrong. No. They were worshipping idols with sincerity, thinking that this is what they're supposed to do. Thinking that by worshipping, those idols who used to be righteous people, good people, this is how they make Allah happy to them. So until Nuh came and he started telling them, no, this is not the way you make Allah happy with you. This is wrong. You are not supposed to worship people. You are not supposed to go to the grave of that righteous person and pray to him and ask him whatever you are supposed to ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how they corrected these wrong concepts and wrong beliefs that people had at that time. The other mission of the prophets was leadership. Leadership in the matters of life, dunya, and in the matters of faith. Prophets were leaders. And they led their people to become better people, to become more decent human beings. And the prophets exercised their leadership through example, through service. The prophets didn't all the time tell their people, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. No. Sometimes they have to, but most of the time the prophets, they led their people by example. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, you have in the Messenger of Allah the best example. If you want to be the best believer, look at the Prophet ﷺ. If you want to be the best worshipper, look at the Prophet ﷺ. If you want to be the best husband, look at the Prophet ﷺ. If you want to be the best father, look at the Prophet ﷺ. If you want to be the best grandfather, look at the way the Prophet ﷺ dealt with his grandsons, Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein. If you want to be the best neighbor, look at the Prophet ﷺ. If you want to be the best leader, the best imam, the best activist, look at the Prophet ﷺ. This is how the prophets led people. And this leadership required obedience, discipline. That's why the Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about him in the Quran, وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ فَازَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. Whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, indeed he or she is the true successful one. مَنْ أَطَاعَنِي فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهِ وَمَنْ عَصَانِي فَقَدْ عَصَى اللَّهِ. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever obeyed me as if he or she obeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. and whoever disobeyed me, as if he or she disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ كان مبلغ. He was the representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth. He was the spokesman of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth. Someone cannot be a true believer and a true Muslim until he or she obey Allah Azza wa Jal and obey the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. This is how they have exercised the leadership position that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. Number 7, shifting people's focus from this worldly life to the afterlife. When the prophets were sent to people, they had only one thing in their minds: how to have power, how to collect wealth, how to excel in this life, how to do whatever they want to achieve in this life, without thinking about what is going to happen after death. It's as if there was no afterlife at all. And many of the people, they argued with their own prophets. As people of Quraysh, they brought some bones, and very old bones, to the Prophet ﷺ. And they started scratching, the bones became, dust. And they told him, Muhammad, do you mean that your Lord is going to revive, is going to give life back to these bones? Is this what you are trying to tell us? وَقَالُوا مَا هِيَ إِلَّا حَيَاتُنَا الدُّنْيَا. And they said, there is nothing except this worldly life. نَمُوتُ وَنَحْيَا. Okay? We are living here, then we die, and there is nothing else after death. That's why they were killing each other in order to get something in this life. Because for them, if you lose this opportunity, that's it. There's nothing else. So the prophets, what they did, they shifted the focus of people from just this worldly life to the afterlife through many verses of the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started talking about وَمَا هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَعِبٌ وَلَهْوٌ. And this life of this world is nothing except just amusement. Just amusement. وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةِ. Indeed, the afterlife, the life of over there, لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانُ لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. It's the true life. The true life is not this one. The real and the true life is the one that will start after death. That's why at the end of Surah Al-Fajr, before that, يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي. No, before that, يا ليتني. When the person realizes that death is approaching, he or she will say, يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي. I wish, يا ليتني, I wish if I've done something good for my life. The life here in this verse is not the one that I left behind. No. The life is the true one, the one that is coming. And I wish if I did something here for that life. Unfortunately, I didn't do anything. I didn't prepare anything for that life. So this is what the prophets came to teach people, to shift their focus from this worldly life to the afterlife. It doesn't mean that disconnect yourself from this worldly life. Don't do anything. No. And this is not what the Sahaba, the followers of the Prophet ﷺ, understood. If this is what they understood, we would never hear about Uthman ibn Affan working very hard as a successful businessman. Abdurrahman ibn Auf working very hard as a businessman. And they were the wealthiest among the Sahaba, and they were working very hard. But excelling in their business was not on the expense of working for the afterlife. So the reality here is how to make this balance between this worldly life where you are, what's the purpose of your life, and how you can work very hard in order to do what Allah asked you to do here, to build a civilization, to enjoy the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but at the same time, do not forget that the true life is not the one that you are experiencing here, but the true life is the one that is coming next, that will start right after death. And this is something very, very important, that the prophets worked very hard to help people shift that focus from being only towards this worldly life in order to be also, or to include also, the afterlife. The last characteristic or mission of the prophets, again, what we have mentioned before, iqamatul hujjah. Iqamatul hujjah means to give the information to people, all the information, so people won't have any excuse on the day of judgment that they did not receive any prophet, they did not hear about any message. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, رُسُلًا مُبَشِّرِينَ وَمُنذِرِينَ لِأَلَّا يَكُونَ لِلنَّاسِ عَلَى اللَّهِ حُجَّةٌ بَعْدَ الرُّسُلِ. So after sending the prophets, there will be no one with any excuse for not doing what they were supposed to do. That's why, subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ in Hajjat al-Wada', in the farewell speech that he gave in his Hajj, you know, every time he tells them something and he says, أَلَا هَلْ بَلَّغْتُ? Did I convey to you what Allah has asked me to convey? And everybody was, Bala ya Rasulullah. You did. You conveyed everything. And then what did he say? Allahumma fashhad. Oh Allah, be my witness that I have conveyed to them. Why? Because the Prophet didn't want anyone after him to come on the day of judgment and tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, this man did not tell me about you, did not tell me what's the purpose of my life, did not tell me what I was supposed to do in my life. Which means that the Prophet ﷺ, you know, conveyed the message exactly the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted him to convey this message. So this is, you know, or these are the missions of the prophets and the messengers, if we want to break them down, to know exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked his prophets and messengers to do. Let's talk a little bit about the characteristics of the prophets. Sifat or Qiṣaṣ Al-Anbiya. Number one, all of them, they were humans. And none of them was an angel. And when we say they were humans, meaning that they did in their lives everything humans do. They eat, they work, they travel, they walk, they run, they sleep, they go to the market and shop, they get sick, they get angry, they go through trials. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests them like everyone else. They get angry. We have seen Musa alayhi salam getting angry and grabbing his brother Harun from his beard. We have seen Prophet Ayyub alayhi salam getting sick for a long time. We have seen all the prophets, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam being tested like no one else. So this is the first characteristic of the prophets. They were human beings like everyone else. يأكلون الطعام ويمشون في الأسواق. They eat the food and they walk in the marketplace. Again, this was a reason that some people rejected them because they said it's impossible. How come you are a prophet? How come you connect with the Creator and yet you are like us? You go to the marketplace, you buy and sell and trade and work like everyone else. So this is the first characteristic. The second characteristic of prophets, perfection. The prophets, it's impossible that a prophet has kind of like a defect in his morality or even physically. Meaning that when it comes to akhlaq, to morality, they were the best. They were perfect. Why? Because they have to be role models. They have to be role models. So, what we hear sometimes in the other books, of course, it's impossible to be true. But sometimes you hear about some of the prophets, like Prophet Nuh alayhi salam getting drunk, Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam wrestling with Allah, and they say, no, not wrestling with Allah, wrestling with the angel, and he has stolen prophethood from his brother. His brother was supposed to be prophet, but he stole. This defeats the purpose of being a prophet. It's impossible that prophets can do this kind of stuff. So prophets, we believe that all the prophets were the top in morality, and also in their physical appearance. That's why there is a misconception about Prophet Musa alayhi salam. When he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the dua, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him his brother Harun, يفقه قولي, some people, they misinterpret what Prophet Musa meant. يفقه قولي, so my speech will be straight. They said, some people say that he had a defect in speaking. He had a problem expressing himself. Why? They said because when he was a baby and Harun wanted to kill him, the wife of Harun, she told him, he's a baby. Why killing him? He said, oh, I know, he will grow up and he might kill me, as the sorcerers told him. And she told him, he doesn't know anything. Actually, he bite, he bite Fir'aun, and Fir'aun got angry and he wanted to kill him. And the wife of Fir'aun, she told him, he's a baby, he doesn't know anything. Give him a piece of charcoal, like a fire, and you will see. And it says that Musa put it as a baby, put it in his mouth, so that's why he had this defect, in speech. This is not true at all. The true interpretation of يفقه قولي, because Musa alayhi salam was kind of a little bit, sometimes he get emotional, he get angry, and he was afraid that this feeling might prevent him from expressing himself, so that's why he wanted with him always his brother Harun to help him conveying the message to Fir'aun. So having a prophet or a messenger with a defect like this, it defeats the purpose of being prophet. Why? Because the prophets are supposed to convey the message of Allah. Allah will never give his message to a person who is considered a prophet or a messenger, and he cannot convey clearly the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the second characteristic of the prophets, number one is perfection, number one in morality, and also in their physical appearance and performance. Number three, chosen from the best of lineage. All the prophets were chosen from the best of lineage and families and tribes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen Nuh from the best, has chosen Ala Imran, the family of Imran, Maryam, from Zakaria and Yahya, and all the best. He has chosen Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the best. The best tribe in Arabia, the best tribe in Quraysh, Banu Hashim, Banu Abdi Manaf, all the way till his great-great-grandfather Ismail and Ibrahim. So all the prophets were chosen from the best families and the best tribes, so no one could say anything about them later on. This is another characteristic of the prophets. Number four, smartness. All the prophets were very smart. And we can see in the way prophets argued, with their, with the tyrants of their times. Like Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he had the debate, with the people and with Namrud himself. When Namrud told him, who is your Lord? He told him, Rabbi alladhi yuhyi wa yumit. My Lord gives life and takes life from the creation. He told him, I can do that. I can do that. So he asked somebody who was in the prison about to be executed, to be released. He told him, okay, I gave him life. And he grabbed something, an innocent person, and he killed him. And he told him, I killed him. Which is childish. Ibrahim a.s. didn't want to argue with him, telling him that, oh, this is not what I meant or something. No. Ibrahim a.s. was very smart. He told him something else. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْتِي بِالشَّمْسِ مِنَ الْمَشْرِقِ فَأْتِ بِهَا مِنَ الْمَغْرِبِ. Allah brings the sun from the east. Can you bring it from the west? What happened? فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرْ. Buhita means, he got frozen. He couldn't say anything. Can he do it? He cannot do it. So this is an indication of the smartness, how Ibrahim a.s. was smart. And all the prophets, when they conveyed the message, when they argued with people, they were all smart. So their smartness helped them to convey the message in the best way possible. And number 5, and I will conclude by this, all of them, they were a source of guidance. They were a source of guidance, meaning that if anyone would like to find out how to be guided, from where to get this guidance, then look at the prophets. Go to the Quran and just look at the prophets. All of them, with no exception. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He mentioned some of them in the Quran, in one of the verses, at the end He told the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ هَدَى اللَّهِ. Those are the people whom Allah has guided. فَبِهُدَاهُ مُقْتَدِهِ. So follow their guidance. Even the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to look at the lives and the experiences of the prophets before him, so he can learn from their own experiences. He can learn from the way they argued, the way they obeyed Allah Azza wa Jalla, the way they were patient until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted them victory. So these are some of the characteristics of the prophets, and next week inshallah we will continue with this and other topics related to the lives and the stories of the prophets. Bismillah Azza wa Jalla, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always to help us understanding the lives of the prophets alayhi salatu wassalam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make them our example, our qudwa, our role model, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to follow their footsteps and to follow their guidance. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He brought us together here, to bring us together in the Firdaus al-A'la with all these prophets, with all these messengers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us everything good, our righteous actions, and forgive us for our mistakes and shortcomings. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم